The mining colony of Kepler 442b had been humanity's proudest achievement until the day the dragons arrived. What the colonists thought were beautiful crystalline formations deep in the planet's crust turned out to be something far more dangerous. The Vorthak, as they called themselves, were not mere beasts, but an ancient species that had been sleeping in the planet's core for thousands of years. Captain Sarah Martinez stood on the observation deck of the colony's main habitat, watching the latest evacuation shuttle disappear into the orange-tinted sky. 3 months ago, they had been a thriving community of 8,000 souls. Now fewer than 200 remained, and most of those were military personnel preparing for what everyone knew would be a losing battle. The Vorthak were unlike anything humanity had encountered in their expansion across the galaxy. Each creature stood nearly 30 feet tall, with crystalline scales that could deflect plasma fire and claws that could tear through reinforced steel like paper. But it was their eyes that made them truly terrifying. One direct look into those swirling, hypnotic orbs and even the strongest human mind would shatter like glass. The lucky ones simply died from the psychic shock. The unlucky ones lived, but their minds were left broken, trapped in endless nightmares. "Ma'am, another patrol just went dark," reported Lieutenant Chen, his voice tight with barely controlled fear. "That's the third one this week," Sarah nodded grimly. They had tried everything. Mirror shields, neural dampeners, even experimental psychic blockers developed by the science team. Nothing worked. The moment a human made eye contact with a Vorthak, it was over. The aliens seemed to know this too, deliberately seeking out visual contact before moving in for the kill. Down in the colony's residential sector, 12-year-old Emma Vasquez was breaking the most important rule in the evacuation protocols. She was supposed to be on the next transport off-world, but her younger brother Jake was missing and she refused to leave without him. While the adults prepared their weapons and checked their equipment, Emma crawled through the maintenance tunnels that honeycombed the habitat, searching for any sign of her brother. Emma was different from other children, though she had never told anyone about it. Since she was small, she had seen things that others couldn't. Strange lights around people, whispers in languages that didn't exist, and dreams that sometimes came true. Her parents had taken her to doctors, but the tests always came back normal. Eventually, she learned to keep her experiences to herself. The tunnel she was crawling through opened into a storage bay near the colony's edge. As she pushed aside the grate, she heard a sound that made her blood freeze, a low, rumbling growl that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Peeking through the opening, she saw something that should have killed her instantly. A Vorthak stood in the center of the bay, its massive form shimmering with an otherworldly light. But this one was different from the descriptions she had heard over the emergency broadcasts. Where the others were described as having dark metallic scales, this creature's hide was pure white, like fresh snow or polished bone. Its eyes, instead of the typical swirling black of its kind, glowed with an intense silver light that seemed to pierce straight through to her soul. By every law of nature and every piece of evidence gathered by the colony's scientists, Emma should have died the moment she looked at the creature. Her mind should have been crushed by the psychic pressure that radiated from those alien eyes. Instead, she found herself staring back at the dragon with complete calm, feeling something she had never experienced before, a sense of recognition, as if she were looking at a long-lost friend. The white dragon's massive head tilted to one side, its expression changing from predatory alertness to what almost looked like surprise. For several long moments, girl and dragon regarded each other across the storage bay. Emma could feel something brushing against her mind, not the crushing force that destroyed other humans, but a gentle touch like fingers trailing through water. "Impossible," came a voice in her head, speaking in perfect English, though she somehow knew it was not the dragon's native language. "You are human, yet you do not break. How is this so?" Emma should have been terrified. Every instinct should have been screaming at her to run, to hide, to call for help. Instead, she found herself climbing out of the maintenance tunnel and standing upright, never breaking eye contact with the massive predator. "I don't know," she said quietly, her voice echoing in the large space. "I've always been different. I see things that others can't." The dragon's head moved closer, and Emma could see the incredible detail of its features. Unlike the crude descriptions from the reports, this creature was beautiful in a way that took her breath away. Its scales caught and reflected light like 1,000 tiny mirrors, and there was an intelligence in its eyes that was unmistakably ancient and profound. Different indeed, the voice came again. You possess something that your kind has forgotten. Something that was lost to them long ago. What do you mean? Emma asked, surprised by her own boldness. What did we lose? The sight that sees beyond sight. The gift that allows one to perceive the truth beneath the surface. The dragon's massive form settled into a more relaxed position, though it never stopped watching her intently. Tell me, small one, can you see the light that surrounds living things? Emma blinked in surprise. The auras? You can see them too? So you do possess the gift. There was something that might have been satisfaction in the mental voice. This changes much. Perhaps there is hope yet. Before Emma could ask what the dragon meant, the sound of booted feet echoed from the corridor outside the storage bay. The dragon's head snapped up, its expression instantly shifting back to the predatory alertness she had first witnessed. Your kind approaches. They mean to harm me. The silver eyes fixed on hers again. Will you warn them away, gifted one? Or will you let them meet their doom through their own ignorance? Emma looked toward the entrance to the bay, then back at the magnificent creature before her. In that moment, she made a choice that would change not just her own life, but the fate of every human on Kepler 442b. The heavy footsteps were getting closer, and she could hear the distinctive whine of charging plasma rifles. Soon a squad of Marines would burst through that door, and if they made eye contact with the dragon, they would die. But if she called out to warn them, she would be revealing herself and her impossible immunity to the creature's deadly gaze. Emma took a deep breath and made her decision. Wait, Emma called out, her voice cutting through the silence just as the first Marine appeared in the doorway. Don't look at it directly. Cover your eyes! Sergeant Rodriguez, a veteran who had survived 2 encounters with the dark-scaled Vorthak, immediately raised his hand to shield his vision. His team followed suit, though she could see the confusion on their faces. They had come here following energy readings, expecting to find another of the deadly creatures that had been terrorizing the colony. Kid, what are you doing here? Rodriguez called out, his voice muffled by his tactical visor. This area was evacuated hours ago. The white dragon remained perfectly still, though Emma could sense its surprise at her decision to protect the humans. She positioned herself between the Marines and the creature, her heart pounding but her resolve firm. My brother is missing, she said, which was true, even if it wasn't the whole truth. I was looking for him when I found this one. It's not like the others. You chose to protect them, the dragon's voice whispered in her mind, even knowing they would take you from this place. Emma glanced back at the magnificent creature. They're scared. They've lost so many people, and yet you trust me more than you trust them. That gave Emma pause. It was true, and she wasn't entirely sure why. There was something about this particular dragon that felt different, almost familiar. Where the others radiated malice and hunger, this one seemed more curious than hostile. Rodriguez, we need to evacuate this area immediately, came Captain Martinez's voice over the comm. We're detecting massive energy signatures throughout this sector. The sergeant cursed under his breath. Ma'am, we've got a situation here. There's a Vorthak in Storage Bay 7, and somehow the Vasquez girl is standing right in front of it without being affected. There was a long pause. That's impossible, Sergeant. No human can withstand direct visual contact. I'm looking at it right now, Captain. The girl is maybe 10 feet away from the thing, and they're staring right at each other. Emma could hear urgent conversations happening over the Marines' comm channels. Scientists, military officers, and colony officials were all trying to understand what they were witnessing. Meanwhile, the white dragon remained motionless, watching the humans with those incredible silver eyes. They speak of you as if you are not here, the dragon observed. Do all humans treat their young this way? Sometimes, Emma replied, surprising herself with how natural the mental communication felt. Adults think they know what's best. What's your name? Names are complex things among my kind. You may call me Zephyrus if you must use words. There was a pause. You are not afraid of me, should I be? Every other member of your species who has looked upon me has died in terror. You ask me questions as if we were equals. Emma considered this. Maybe we are equals, just different. Captain Martinez arrived with a full science team, all wearing specialized visors that completely blocked their vision. They moved carefully, guided by instruments and verbal directions from Emma. Dr. Yates, the colony's lead xenobiologist, was practically vibrating with excitement despite the danger. Emma, I need you to describe everything you see, Dr. Yates said, holding a recording device. This could be the breakthrough we've been looking for. Emma looked at Zephyrus, who seemed amused by the human's caution. It's about 30 feet tall, like the others, but its scales are white instead of dark. They look like crystal or polished marble. Its eyes are silver, not black, and they glow. Fascinating, Dr. Yates murmured. Emma, can you tell if it's trying to communicate? Shall I tell them? Emma asked Zephyrus silently. Tell them what you wish. I am curious to see how they respond. It can talk, Emma said simply. In my mind, it says its name is Zephyrus. The effect on the humans was immediate. Several Marines raised their weapons despite being unable to see their target, while the scientists began talking excitedly among themselves. Captain Martinez stepped forward, her command authority clear even behind her visual shield. Emma, I need you to ask it why the Vorthak are attacking our colony. Emma relayed the question and waited for Zephyrus's response. When it came, it wasn't what anyone expected. We are not attacking your colony, Zephyrus said, and Emma could sense both sadness and frustration in the mental voice. We are trying to save it. Save it? Emma repeated aloud. From what? The corruption that spreads through this world's core. Your mining operations have awakened something that should have remained buried, something that feeds on psychic energy and grows stronger with each mind it consumes. Emma felt a chill run down her spine. She turned to address the humans behind her. It says you woke up something dangerous with the mining. Something that eats minds. Dr. Yates stepped forward eagerly. Ask it what exactly was awakened. We need to understand what we're dealing with. Show them, Zephyrus said. Let them see what approaches. The white dragon's scales began to glow more brightly, and suddenly Emma could see something beyond the physical walls of the storage bay. Her vision expanded, showing her the underground tunnels and caverns that the miners had created. Deep below, something vast and dark was moving through the passages, leaving corrupted crystalline growths in its wake. Oh no, Emma whispered, seeing the true extent of the threat. The thing below was enormous, easily dwarfing even the largest Vorthak. But worse than its size was what it left behind. Twisted crystal formations that pulsed with malevolent energy, spreading like an infection through the planet's crust. It feeds on psychic energy, Zephyrus explained. When it reaches the surface, it will consume every mind on this world, human and Vorthak alike. Emma, what are you seeing? Captain Martinez demanded. Emma described the vision as best she could, watching the adult's body language change from skepticism to growing alarm. When she finished, there was a long silence. If this is true, Dr. Yates said slowly, then the Vorthak attacks weren't attacks at all. Emma finished. They were trying to drive us away from the infected areas. Your kind's psychic blindness makes you vulnerable to the corruption, Zephyrus continued. We tried to force you to flee, but you resisted. Many of my people died trying to protect yours. Emma felt tears welling up in her eyes. How many? Too many. And still your leaders plan to use weapons that will only feed the entity below. Captain Martinez was speaking urgently into her comm unit, relaying Emma's translations to Colony Command. Emma could hear arguments breaking out over the channels as military officials debated whether to believe the testimony of a 12-year-old girl and an alien dragon. They will not listen, Zephyrus said sadly. Your kind is too proud to accept help from those they see as enemies. Emma wiped her eyes and straightened her shoulders. Then we have to show them. We have to prove that you're telling the truth. How do you propose we do that, small one? Emma looked around at the humans, all blind behind their protective visors, then back at the magnificent dragon who had trusted her enough to share its knowledge. We're going to go down there, she said, her voice filled with a determination that surprised even her. We're going to see this corruption for ourselves, and then we're going to figure out how to stop it. Zephyrus was quiet for a long moment. You would enter the depths with me, knowing that death waits there? Someone has to, Emma replied. And I'm the only human who can look at you without dying. That makes me the only one who can help you. You are very brave, Emma Vasquez, or very foolish. Emma smiled for the first time since this all began. Maybe both. The journey into the planet's depths began at dawn. Captain Martinez had fought the decision for hours, arguing that sending a child into unknown danger was unacceptable. But when Colony Command received seismic readings showing something massive moving through the deepest mining tunnels, they realized they had no choice. Emma was their only link to the Vorthak, and Zephyrus was their only guide to what lay below. Emma had never ridden a dragon before, She sat just behind Zephyrus's massive head, her hands gripping the creature's crystalline spines as they descended through the main mining shaft. The dragon's scales provided perfect handholds, and she found that she instinctively knew how to balance herself as they moved. "You adapt quickly," Zephyrus observed as they navigated a particularly narrow passage. "Most beings require much training before they can bond with one of my kind." "Bond?" Emma asked, genuinely curious. "The connection between rider and dragon. It allows us to share thoughts, perceptions, even memories. You achieved it naturally, without training or preparation." Emma considered this as they descended deeper. The walls around them were no longer the clean-cut stone of human engineering, but rough natural rock interspersed with veins of the strange crystalline formations she had seen in her vision. Some of these crystals pulsed with a faint, sickly light that made her stomach turn. "The corruption is getting stronger," she said aloud, knowing that Dr. Yates was monitoring their progress through the communication device strapped to her wrist. "Indeed," Zephyrus confirmed. "Can you feel it trying to reach into your mind?" Emma paused, focusing on the sensation at the edge of her consciousness. There was definitely something there, a whispering presence that seemed to promise knowledge and power if she would just listen a little closer. "I can feel it," she reported, "but it's not overwhelming. It feels like background noise." "Your natural psychic defenses are stronger than I expected," Zephyrus said with what sounded like approval. "Among my people, only the eldest and most experienced can resist the entity's influence at this depth." They reached a vast cavern that had once been the main mining operations center. Massive excavation equipment sat abandoned, covered in the same crystalline growths that lined the walls. But it was what hung from the ceiling that made Emma gasp in horror. Dozens of mining pods were suspended in a web of corrupted crystal, each one containing the barely visible outline of a human figure. The crystals were growing through and around the miners, integrating their bodies into the alien structure while keeping them alive. "Dear God," came Dr. Yates's voice over the comm. "Emma, what are you seeing?" Emma described the grotesque scene, her voice shaking as she realized that these people were still alive, trapped in a living nightmare. "Can we save them?" she asked Zephyrus. "Some, perhaps. If we can reach the entity's core and sever its connection to this area. But we must move quickly. The longer they remain connected, the less of their original selves will survive." They moved deeper into the cavern system, following passages that no human had ever explored. Zephyrus moved with careful precision, avoiding certain crystal formations while pointing out others that were safe to touch. "These crystals are not native to your world," the dragon explained as they paused near a cluster of particularly large formations. "They are extensions of the entity itself, like fingers reaching out to feel for new sources of psychic energy." Emma examined the crystals more closely. Through her enhanced perception, she could see energy flowing through them like blood through veins, all leading deeper into the planet's core. "How long has this thing been down here?" "Longer than your species has existed. It came from the void between stars, drawn by the psychic emanations of a young civilization that once lived on this world." "What happened to them? What will happen to your people if we fail?" "They were consumed, their consciousness absorbed into the entity's growing mass. Their cities became crystal gardens. Their children became nodes in a vast psychic network." Emma shuddered, imagining the thriving human colony above suffering the same fate. "How do we stop it?" "The entity has a core consciousness, a central nexus where all the absorbed minds are processed and integrated. If we can reach it and disrupt the process, we might be able to free the trapped souls and weaken the creature enough to drive it back into dormancy." "Might? I will not lie to you, Emma Vasquez. The chances of success are small. Many of my people have tried and failed. The entity grows stronger with each mind it consumes, and it has been feeding for months on your mining crews." They continued downward, the air growing thicker and more oppressive with each passing hour. Emma's head began to ache from the constant psychic pressure, and she found herself having to fight increasingly harder to maintain her mental barriers. "Rest," Zephyrus said, settling into a stable position on a wide ledge. "You have been resisting the entity's influence for too long. You need to recover your strength." Emma gratefully slid down from the dragon's back and sat against a relatively clean section of rock wall. "How do you know so much about this thing?" "Because I have encountered its kind before. Long ago when I was young and my people were still exploring the galaxy, we found a world much like this one. We arrived too late to save the native species, but we learned how to fight these entities. Did you win? Eventually. But the cost was terrible. Half my clan died in the battle, and the world itself was left scarred and lifeless. We swore never to let such a thing happen again. Emma looked up at her companion, seeing the dragon in a new light. That's why you came here. You've been watching our expansion, waiting for us to encounter one of these things. Your species spreads quickly across the galaxy, often without understanding the dangers you might awaken. We have been trying to protect you, though you make it difficult with your weapons and your refusal to listen. I'm sorry, Emma said simply, for what my people did to yours. You are not responsible for the actions of your leaders. But you are here now, willing to risk your life to make things right. That speaks well of your character. Dr. Yates's voice crackled over the comm. Emma, we're getting some concerning readings from the surface. The seismic activity is increasing, and we're detecting energy signatures similar to what you described near the trapped miners. Emma felt her blood run cold. It's spreading. The entity is moving closer to the surface. Yes, Zephyrus confirmed grimly. It knows we are here. It is preparing to claim the mines above before we can interfere. Emma stood up, her brief rest forgotten. How much farther to the core? Several hours if we move carefully. But if the entity is accelerating its timeline, then we don't move carefully, Emma said firmly. We move fast. That will be dangerous. There will be traps, guardian constructs, and the psychic pressure will become nearly unbearable. Emma checked her equipment and made sure her comm unit was securely fastened. My brother is up there. My friends. Everyone I care about. We have to try. Zephyrus studied her for a long moment. You remind me of someone I knew long ago. A young warrior of my own kind who died fighting these creatures. What was their name? Feldris. They believed that every life was worth protecting no matter the cost. They died holding the line while others evacuated a doomed city. Emma felt a strange sense of honor at the comparison. Did they succeed? They bought enough time for 3,000 civilians to escape. The city fell, but those people lived to build new homes elsewhere. Then they won what mattered, Emma said, climbing back onto Zephyrus's back. Let's go win what matters here. The dragon's mental voice carried a note of deep respect. Hold tight, young warrior. We fly toward either victory or a glorious end. As they plunged deeper into the corrupted depths, Emma felt the entity's influence pressing against her mind like a physical weight. But she also felt something else. The bond with Zephyrus growing stronger, their combined will creating a shield that the ancient evil could not easily penetrate. Behind them, the comm unit crackled with increasingly urgent reports from the surface. The corruption was spreading faster now, reaching toward the colony with crystalline tendrils that pulsed with hunger. Time was running out, but Emma and Zephyrus flew on, racing toward a confrontation that would determine the fate of every living soul on Kepler 442b. The first guardian appeared when they were still 3 levels above the entity's core. Emma felt it before she saw it. A wrongness in the air that made her skin crawl and her teeth ache. Zephyrus came to an abrupt stop, hovering in the center of a vast chamber whose walls were completely covered in the pulsing crystalline growths. Do not look directly at it when it manifests, Zephyrus warned urgently. These constructs are made from the absorbed consciousness of previous victims. They will try to overwhelm you with their pain and despair. Emma gripped the dragon's spines tighter as something began to take shape in the center of the chamber. It was roughly humanoid but wrong in every conceivable way. Its body appeared to be made of the same corrupted crystal as the walls. But within the translucent surface, Emma could see the faces of dozens of trapped souls, all screaming silently as they were forced to serve their captor. What do we do? Emma whispered, fighting the urge to look directly at the construct despite Zephyrus's warning. We fight. These guardians are powerful, but they are not indestructible. Watch and learn. Zephyrus inhaled deeply, and Emma felt a strange tingling sensation as energy gathered in the dragon's throat. When Zephyrus exhaled, it wasn't fire that emerged, but a brilliant beam of pure silver light that struck the guardian construct directly in its center mass. The creature let out a sound like breaking glass mixed with human screams. The silver light seemed to burn away the corrupted crystal, revealing the trapped souls within. For a moment, Emma saw them clearly, miners, scientists, and security personnel who had been absorbed during the early stages of the infestation. The light disrupts the entity's control, Zephyrus explained as the construct staggered backward. It gives the trapped souls a chance to break free. Emma watched in amazement as some of the faces within the Guardian began to change expression. Where before there had been only pain and terror, now there was hope and determination. The construct began to tear itself apart as the freed consciousness fought against their bonds. But the victory was short-lived. As the first Guardian crumbled, two more began materializing from the chamber walls. These were larger and more complex, incorporating not just human victims but also the distinctive features of fallen Vorthak warriors. "My people," Zephyrus said sadly. "The entity has learned to use our own dead against us." The new Guardians moved with terrifying speed and intelligence. One launched itself directly at Zephyrus while the other began drawing energy from the surrounding crystals, preparing some kind of ranged attack. Emma felt Zephyrus bank sharply to avoid the first attacker's claws. But the maneuver put them directly in the path of the second Guardian's energy blast. There was no time to dodge. Acting on pure instinct, Emma threw up her hands and focused all her willpower on creating a barrier. To her amazement, a shimmering shield of blue-white energy appeared in the air before them, deflecting the Guardian's attack back into the chamber walls. "Extraordinary," Zephyrus breathed. "You are manifesting psychic defenses without any training. Your potential is far greater than I realized." Emma didn't have time to process this revelation. The first Guardian had recovered from its missed attack and was coming at them again, while the second was already charging up for another blast. "Can you hit them both with your breath weapon?" Emma asked, not simultaneously. "I need time to gather the energy, and they will not give me that luxury." Emma made a decision that would have terrified her a day ago. "Then I'll distract one while you deal with the other." Before Zephyrus could object, Emma leaped from the dragon's back, using her psychic barriers to cushion her landing on a ledge near the chamber wall. The sudden movement caught both Guardians off guard, splitting their attention between the dragon above and the small human who had just made herself a target. "Emma, what are you doing?" Zephyrus demanded. "Buying you time," Emma replied, surprised by how natural the mental communication had become. "Trust me." The second Guardian turned toward her, raising what might have been an arm to deliver a crushing blow. Emma focused on the trapped souls she could see within its crystalline body, particularly the face of a young Vorthak, who couldn't have been much older than herself. "I can see you in there," she said aloud, staring directly at the Guardian despite every instinct screaming at her to look away. "I know you're trapped, but you don't have to serve this thing. You can fight back." The Guardian hesitated, its raised arm trembling as conflicting impulses warred within its stolen consciousness. Emma pressed her advantage, pouring all her empathy and determination into her voice. "You were a warrior once, a protector. Don't let this entity turn you into a weapon against your own people." Behind the Guardian, Zephyrus finished gathering energy and released another silver beam, this one striking the first construct with such force that it shattered completely, releasing a dozen freed souls that dispersed into points of light before fading away. The second Guardian, distracted by Emma's words, took the full force of Zephyrus's follow-up attack. But instead of simply crumbling like the others, this one fought back against the silver light. Emma could see the young Vorthak's face becoming clearer within the crystal matrix, its eyes focusing on her with desperate hope. "Help us," came a weak mental voice. We remember who we were." Emma reached out with her own psychic abilities, still not fully understanding what she was doing, but trusting her instincts completely. She felt her consciousness touch the trapped souls within the Guardian, offering them a lifeline back to their own identities. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The Guardian's crystal body began to crack and fragment as the absorbed souls reclaimed their individual awareness. But instead of dispersing like the others, they began to coalesce into new forms, ghostly but distinct figures that retained their original appearance. "Impossible," Zephyrus whispered. "You are not merely freeing them. You are helping them maintain cohesion after separation from the entity. Such a thing requires what?" Emma asked, watching in wonder as the freed souls gained solidity and strength. "It requires the psychic potential of a true seer, one who can perceive and manipulate the fundamental connections between minds and souls." The freed souls, 3 humans and 1 young Vorthak, turned toward Emma with expressions of profound gratitude. The Vorthak warrior approached her slowly, its ghostly form flickering but stable. "You have given us back ourselves," it said. its mental voice clear and strong. "We are forever in your debt." Emma felt tears running down her cheeks. "Can you help us stop the entity? We are bound to this place by the trauma of our absorption, but yes, we can guide you through the remaining defenses and warn you of the traps ahead." Dr. Yates's voice crackled over the comm, distorted by the increasing psychic interference. "Emma, we're reading massive energy spikes from your location. What's happening down there?" "We're making progress," Emma replied, climbing back onto Zephyrus's back with the help of the freed souls. "But the entity knows we're coming. It's going to throw everything it has at us before we reach the core." "Indeed," Zephyrus agreed. "The remaining guardians will be stronger and more numerous, and the entity itself will begin to take direct action against us." The young Vorthak warrior's ghost flew alongside them as they descended to the next level. "The entity's consciousness is vast and alien, but it has weaknesses. It cannot process individual thought patterns that are too different from its own. Your human unpredictability, combined with Zephyrus's ancient wisdom, creates a combination it cannot easily predict or counter." Emma nodded, feeling a strange sense of confidence despite the overwhelming odds they faced. "Then we use that. We do things it won't expect. What do you have in mind?" Zephyrus asked. Emma looked around at their small group. An ancient dragon, a human girl with untrained psychic abilities, and a handful of freed souls seeking redemption. By any rational measure, they should have no chance against an entity that had consumed entire civilizations. But Emma was beginning to understand that rationality wasn't going to win this fight. It was going to take something else entirely, the kind of stubborn, illogical, utterly human refusal to give up that had carried her species across the galaxy, despite every obstacle in their path. "We're going to do what humans do best," she said with a grim smile. "We're going to improvise." The descent continued, but now they had allies. The freed souls scouted ahead, warning them of traps and showing them hidden passages that would avoid the worst of the entity's defenses. With each level they passed, more guardians tried to stop them, and each time Emma managed to free at least some of the trapped souls, building their small army of allies. But she could feel the strain taking its toll. Her psychic abilities were being pushed far beyond their natural limits, and the constant pressure from the entity's consciousness was like a weight on her soul. "We are almost there," Zephyrus said as they reached the final passage leading to the core chamber. "Are you ready for this?" Emma looked ahead to where a faint red glow emanated from the tunnel's end. Beyond that light waited an entity older than human civilization, powered by the absorbed consciousness of thousands of victims. "No," she said honestly, "but I'm going anyway." The core chamber was a cathedral of horror that defied human comprehension. Emma had expected something physical, perhaps a massive creature or an alien structure. Instead, she found herself staring into a sphere of pure consciousness that hung suspended in the center of a vast cavern. The entity's core was a writhing mass of psychic energy that constantly shifted between colors that had no names, shapes that hurt to perceive, and patterns that seemed to exist in dimensions beyond normal space. Surrounding the core were thousands of crystalline tendrils that stretched out like a vast nervous system, each one connecting to chambers carved into the cavern walls. Within these chambers, Emma could see the preserved bodies of the entity's victims, their minds linked to the central consciousness while their bodies were kept alive in a state of suspended animation. The full scope of its power, Zephyrus said, and Emma could hear the awe and fear in the dragon's mental voice. "It has been feeding for far longer than we realized." Emma tried to count the chambers but gave up when she reached 1,000. "All these people. How long has this been going on?" "Decades, perhaps centuries. The entity has been patient, taking only a few mines at a time until your mining operations weakened the barriers that kept it contained. The freed souls that had followed them down clustered together, their ghostly forms flickering with distress as they approached their former prison. The young Vorthak warrior flew closer to Emma. "We can feel our former bodies calling to us," it said. "The entity still maintains connection threads to our physical forms. If those connections could be severed, we could free everyone at once," Emma finished, understanding immediately. "But we'd have to get close enough to the core to disrupt its control matrix. That will not be easy," Zephyrus warned. "The entity is fully aware of our presence now. It will defend itself with everything it has." As if responding to the dragon's words, the core's light began to pulse more rapidly. The chamber filled with a sound like whispers in a language that predated human speech. and Emma felt the full weight of an alien intelligence turning its attention toward them. Who dares disturb the great convergence? The voice that spoke was not heard, but felt, pressing directly against their minds with crushing force. Small sparks of consciousness, you will join the collective. Your fear and pain will feed our growth. Emma staggered under the psychic assault, but she found that her bond with Zephyrus helped distribute the pressure between them. The dragon's ancient mind was better equipped to handle such attacks, while her human unpredictability seemed to confuse the entity's attempts to penetrate her defenses. It is trying to break us down individually, Zephyrus observed. But our bond creates a resonance it cannot easily disrupt. Then we stay together, Emma replied, gripping the dragon's spines tighter. No matter what it throws at us, the entity's response was swift and overwhelming. The crystalline tendrils throughout the chamber began to writhe and pulse, and new guardians started materializing from the walls themselves. But these were different from the ones they had fought before. These were perfect recreations of Emma and Zephyrus down to the smallest detail. Mirror constructs, Zephyrus identified grimly. It is using our own forms against us, powered by the absorbed knowledge of our capabilities. The false Emma stood on the back of the false Zephyrus, her face twisted into an expression of cruel mockery. When she spoke, it was with Emma's own voice but filled with malice. You think you're special because you can see what others can't? You're just another mind to be harvested, another source of food for something greater than yourself. Emma felt a chill of recognition. The entity wasn't just copying her appearance, it was reflecting her own doubts and fears back at her. The false Emma was everything she worried she might become, selfish, cruel, and willing to sacrifice others for her own benefit. Do not listen to its lies, Zephyrus counseled. It seeks to make you doubt yourself to weaken your resolve, but the false Emma wasn't finished. Look around you. All these people died because you couldn't save them, because you were too weak, too small, too human to make a difference. What makes you think you can succeed where so many others have failed? Emma closed her eyes and focused on the truth instead of the lies. Yes, many people had died. Yes, she was just one human child against an ancient cosmic horror. But she wasn't alone and she wasn't fighting for herself. When she opened her eyes again, her voice was steady and clear. You're right. I am small. I am human. And that's exactly why I'm going to beat you. She reached out with her psychic abilities, not toward the entity or its constructs, but toward the freed souls that had accompanied them. Will you help me show this thing what humanity is really about? The response was immediate and overwhelming, not just from the souls they had freed, but from every human consciousness trapped within the entity's matrix. Emma felt their voices joining with hers, creating a chorus of defiance that rang through the psychic realm. We remember who we were, they sang in unison. We remember love, hope, dreams, and the courage to reach for the stars despite knowing we might fall. The entity recoiled as if struck. Impossible. The absorbed consciousness cannot resist the convergence. They're not resisting the convergence. Emma realized with sudden clarity. They're changing it. Humanity isn't meant to be absorbed into something else. We're meant to bring out the best in whatever we touch. She stood up on Zephyrus's back, her arms spread wide as she opened herself completely to the psychic connections around her. Through the bond with the dragon, she felt Zephyrus doing the same, adding ancient Vorthak wisdom to the growing network of human determination. Together, Zephyrus said, as we were meant to be. The mirror constructs lunged toward them, but they were met not by defensive barriers but by an expanding wave of shared consciousness. Emma and Zephyrus, backed by hundreds of freed souls, reached out through the entity's own network and began systematically freeing every trapped mind they could find. The process was unlike anything Emma had ever experienced. She felt herself momentarily becoming each person she touched. A miner's determination to provide for his family, a scientist's wonder at the universe's mysteries, a security officer's fierce protectiveness of her colleagues. Each individual consciousness added its own strength to the growing coalition. The entity fought back desperately, trying to sever the connections and maintain control over its absorbed victims. But it had made a critical error in how it processed human consciousness. It had tried to strip away individual identity while keeping the memories and knowledge, not understanding that for humans, the two were inseparably linked. What are you doing? The entity demanded. its mental voice now carrying notes of panic. The convergence cannot be reversed. We're not reversing it, Emma said, her voice now carrying the harmonized tones of hundreds of freed souls. We're improving it. You wanted to absorb human consciousness? Well, congratulations. You're about to learn what it really means to be human. The core began to fluctuate wildly as the entity lost control over more and more of its absorbed victims. The crystalline tendrils connecting the chambers started to crack and shatter, releasing clouds of liberated psychic energy that swirled around the cavern like an aurora of pure thought. But Emma could feel the strain taking its toll. Coordinating so many consciousness simultaneously was beyond what any single mind should be able to handle. Even with Zephyrus's help, she could feel herself beginning to fragment under the pressure. Hold on, Zephyrus urged. We are almost there. I can't, Emma admitted. It's too much. I'm losing myself in all these other minds. That's when she felt it. A familiar touch on the edge of her consciousness. A small, scared voice that she recognized immediately. Emma? Is that really you, Jake? She cried out both mentally and vocally. Her younger brother's consciousness was somewhere in the entity's matrix. Trapped, but still distinctly himself. I knew you'd come for me, Jake said, his mental voice growing stronger as she focused on him. I've been trying to stay me, just like you taught me, even when the bad thing tried to make me forget. Emma felt tears streaming down her face as she reached out to her brother's trapped soul. Through him, she found new strength and purpose. She wasn't just fighting to save strangers anymore, she was fighting to bring her family home. Jake, I need you to help me, she said. Can you help me find the others who are fighting to stay themselves? I can, there are lots of us. We've been hiding in the quiet spaces, trying to remember our names. With Jake as her guide, Emma began to locate the pockets of resistance within the entity's matrix. Individual minds that had refused to be completely absorbed, maintaining their essential humanity despite the overwhelming pressure to conform. These became the focal points for her liberation efforts. Each freed consciousness created a cascade effect, helping to free others and gradually undermining the entity's control over its vast network of absorbed victims. The entity made one final, desperate attempt to maintain control. It began to collapse its own matrix, preparing to destroy all the absorbed consciousness rather than lose them to freedom. It's going to kill everyone rather than let them go, Zephyrus warned. We need to act now. Emma looked around the chaos of the collapsing chamber, at the thousands of souls hanging in the balance between freedom and oblivion. She thought about. Inside the entity's collapsing consciousness, Emma found herself in a realm where thought became reality, and willpower shaped the very fabric of existence. The psychic matrix was a maze of interconnected memories, fears, and absorbed identities, all swirling together in a chaotic storm of conflicting consciousness. Emma. Zephyrus's voice cut through the mental noise. The dragon had followed her into the matrix, their bond allowing them to remain connected even in this alien landscape. This is madness. The entity is destroying itself rather than be conquered. Then we'll have to save it along with everyone else, Emma replied, her mental voice carrying a determination that surprised even her. I won't let anyone die, not even our enemy. She began moving through the matrix, following the psychic threads that connected to individual consciousness. Each person she found was like a candle flame in a hurricane, fighting to maintain their identity, while the entity's death throes threatened to extinguish them forever. The first group she found was a team of miners who had been absorbed weeks ago. Their consciousness had been partially integrated into the entity's collective memory, but enough individual will remained for Emma to reach them. Who are you? One of them asked as Emma's presence touched their awareness. Everything is falling apart. Are we dying? Not if I can help it, Emma replied. She began the delicate process of helping them separate their individual thoughts from the entity's overwhelming presence. It was like performing surgery on a soul, requiring precision and empathy in equal measure. As each consciousness was freed, they joined Emma's growing network of liberated minds. But the process was exhausting, and she could feel her own sense of self beginning to blur at the edges. You're trying to save too many at once, Zephyrus warned. Your mind cannot handle this level of psychic integration. Then help me, Emma shot back. Lend me your strength. The dragon's ancient consciousness merged more fully with hers, providing the stability and experience she needed to continue the liberation process. Together, they moved deeper into the matrix, following the strongest psychic signals toward the entity's original core consciousness. What they found there defied all expectations. At the heart of the alien intelligence was not a malevolent destroyer, but something incredibly old and desperately lonely. The entity's original consciousness was like a child that had been abandoned in the cosmic dark for so long that it had forgotten how to be anything other than hungry. It's not evil, Emma realized with shock. It's just lost. The entity's core consciousness noticed their approach and turned toward them with something that might have been hope. "You came back," it said, its mental voice no longer carrying the overwhelming authority it had displayed before. "I thought you were leaving me alone again." Emma felt a profound sadness as she understood what had driven the entity's actions. It hadn't been trying to destroy other consciousness out of malice, but out of a desperate fear of being alone. It had absorbed other minds not to feed on them, but to have company in the endless void between stars. "How long have you been alone?" she asked gently. "So long. I remember when the universe was young and full of bright minds, but they all went away. They all left me." Zephyrus moved closer, his ancient wisdom recognizing the entity for what it truly was. "You are one of the first consciousness," he said with profound respect. "From the time when the universe was young and psychic entities roamed freely between the stars, the others found new purposes, new forms. They became part of smaller things. But I remained. I waited. I hoped they would return." Emma felt tears that existed only in the psychic realm streaming down her face. The entity wasn't a monster. It was a cosmic orphan, clinging to any consciousness it could find because it was the only way to stave off an eternity of solitude. "You don't have to be alone," she said softly, "but you can't force people to stay with you. That's not friendship. That's imprisonment." The entity's consciousness flickered with confusion. "But if I release them, they will leave. They will go back to their small lives and forget I exist." "Maybe some will," Emma admitted. "But others might choose to stay and be your friend. Real friends who want to be here instead of being forced to be here." She could feel the entity processing this concept, its alien mind struggling to understand the difference between compelled companionship and willing friendship. Meanwhile, the matrix around them continued to collapse as the entity's emotional turmoil affected its ability to maintain the psychic construct. "We need to stabilize the matrix first," Zephyrus urged. "Before we can free the trapped consciousness, we need to prevent the total collapse." Emma reached out to the entity's core consciousness with her newly developed psychic abilities. "Will you let me help you? Let me show you what friendship really looks like." The entity hesitated, then slowly opened its mental barriers. Emma felt the full weight of cosmic loneliness crash down on her. Eons of isolation, of watching civilizations rise and fall while remaining forever separate from the smaller consciousness that made up the universe. But she also showed the entity something in return. Her memories of friendship, family, love, and community. She shared the warmth of her brother's laugh, the pride in Captain Martinez's voice when she did something brave, the patient wisdom in Dr. Yates's teachings, and the deep bond she had formed with Zephyrus. "This is what you're looking for," she explained as the entity experienced human emotion for the first time. "But it can't be taken. It has to be given freely." The revelation transformed the entity's understanding of consciousness itself. Instead of seeing other minds as resources to be absorbed, it began to perceive them as potential companions with their own inherent value. "I understand now," the entity said, its mental voice filled with wonder. "I have been doing everything wrong. I have been so afraid of loneliness that I created a greater isolation." "It's not too late to fix it," Emma assured the ancient consciousness. "Help me free everyone you've absorbed. Give them the choice to stay or go." The entity's response was immediate and overwhelming. It began systematically releasing its hold on every consciousness within the matrix, not just the recent human victims but the absorbed minds of dozens of species collected over millennia. The psychic realm around them transformed from a chaotic storm into something resembling a vast garden, with each freed consciousness blooming like a flower in the infinite space. Some chose to leave immediately, returning to their bodies or dispersing into whatever afterlife awaited them, but others remained, drawn by curiosity about this ancient being and moved by compassion for its loneliness. Emma watched in amazement as a community began to form within the stabilized Matrix, a voluntary collective of beings from across the galaxy who chose to spend time with the entity because they wanted to, not because they were forced to. "Jake," she called out, sensing her brother's consciousness among the freed souls. "Are you okay?" "I'm great." Jake's mental voice was bright with excitement. "Emma, you should see this place now. It's like the biggest playground ever, and there are people here from all over the galaxy." Emma smiled, feeling a profound sense of relief wash over her. "Are you ready to come home?" "Actually," Jake hesitated. "Could I stay here for a little while? The big lonely one is really nice now that it's not scared anymore, and there are so many cool things to learn here." Emma laughed, the sound carrying through the psychic realm like music. Only her brother would turn a cosmic horror into a new friend. "You can visit," she decided, "but you still need to eat your vegetables and do your homework." The entity's consciousness brightened with something that might have been laughter. "I would be honored to have young Jake as a friend, and perhaps you would visit sometimes as well?" "I think I'd like that," Emma replied. She could feel Zephyrus's approval through their bond, along with the dragon's ancient wisdom, recognizing the cosmic significance of what had just occurred. As the psychic matrix stabilized completely and transformed into a voluntary community space, Emma felt herself being gently returned to her physical body. She opened her eyes to find herself still sitting on Zephyrus's back in the cavern, but everything around them had changed. The corrupted crystals were now clear and beautiful, pulsing with a warm, welcoming light. The chambers that had once held trapped victims were opening like flowers, revealing the preserved bodies within as they began to wake up. And at the center of it all, the entity's core had transformed from a chaotic mass of psychic energy into something resembling a small star. Beautiful, warm, and no longer threatening. "We did it," Zephyrus said, wonder filling the dragon's mental voice. "We actually did it," Emma's comm unit crackled to life with Dr. Yates's excited voice. "Emma, we're reading incredible changes in the energy signatures down there. The corrupted crystals on the surface are transforming." "What happened?" Emma smiled, looking around at the former chamber of horrors that was now becoming something like a cosmic meeting place. "We made a new friend," she said simply. And for the first time in cosmic ages, an ancient entity that had known only loneliness was no longer alone. 3 months later, the Kepler 442b colony had become something unprecedented in human history. The first truly integrated multi-species community. The transformation had begun the moment Emma and Zephyrus emerged from the depths, accompanied by hundreds of former prisoners who had chosen to return to the surface world. Emma stood on the observation deck where this had all begun, but instead of watching evacuation shuttles flee the planet, she was observing the controlled landing of the first diplomatic vessel from Earth. The Galactic Council had finally taken notice of the small, mining colony where a human child had accomplished what their greatest minds thought impossible. "Nervous?" Captain Martinez asked, joining Emma at the viewing window. The captain had been promoted to colonial administrator, largely due to her role in supporting the unprecedented first contact situation. "A little," Emma admitted. "It's one thing to make friends with Zephyrus and the entity. It's another thing to explain it to people who think aliens are automatically enemies." Through the transparent aluminum, they could see Vorthak dragons soaring through the sky alongside human aircraft in patrol formations. The sight still amazed visitors, but it had become routine for the colonists. Working together had proven far more effective than fighting separately, and the colony's security had never been stronger. Dr. Yates approached from the elevator, her arms full of data tablets and her face bright with excitement. "Emma, you need to see the latest readings from the Nexus. The entity, Compassion, as it's chosen to call itself now, has established communication with 17 other cosmic consciousness across this sector of the galaxy." Emma smiled at the name the ancient entity had chosen for itself. After experiencing human emotion for the first time, it had decided that compassion was the feeling it most wanted to embody. The transformation had been remarkable to witness. "Are they forming some kind of alliance?" Emma asked. "More like a support network," Dr. Yates replied. "Lonely cosmic entities finding each other and choosing to be friends instead of absorbed or absorbers. It's revolutionary on a scale we're only beginning to understand." The elevator chimed again and Zephyrus emerged in human form, a recent development that had shocked everyone. The dragon's shape-shifting abilities had been dormant for centuries, but the bond with Emma had somehow reactivated them. Now Zephyrus could take the appearance of a tall, pale human with silver eyes, though the dragon preferred to maintain some obviously non-human features as a matter of pride. The diplomatic vessel carries more than just politicians, Zephyrus reported. There are military advisors, xenobiologists, and what appears to be a small army of psychic researchers. They are very interested in studying Emma's abilities. Emma sighed. She had been expecting this ever since news of the events on Kepler 442b had reached Earth. The fact that a human child had developed unprecedented psychic abilities and used them to convert a cosmic threat into an ally had attracted attention from every major power in human space. Do we? They want to turn me into some kind of weapon? She asked bluntly. Captain Martinez shook her head. I've been in communication with the delegation leader. Ambassador Chen, she's actually Dr. Chen's sister, Lieutenant Chen's cousin. Small galaxy. Anyway, she's more interested in establishing a formal framework for psychic-based diplomacy than in weaponizing your abilities. Speaking of which, Dr. Yates added, we've identified 12 other humans in the colony who show varying degrees of psychic potential. Whatever awakened your abilities seems to have had a resonance effect on others. Emma looked out at the colony below, where humans and Vorthak worked side by side in the crystal gardens that had once been corrupted zones. The transformed crystals now served as communication nodes, allowing instant contact with compassion and the growing network of cosmic consciousness it was befriending. Jake's voice echoed from one of the nearby communication crystals. He spent most of his time now in Compassion's realm, serving as an unofficial ambassador between human children and the various alien consciousness that visited the cosmic entity. Emma, guess what? Compassion just made friends with something called a stellar choir. They're living songs that travel between star systems, and they want to perform for the colony sometime. Emma laughed, pressing her hand to the crystal to respond. That sounds amazing, Jake. Just make sure they know that human ears aren't built for cosmic music. Already worked that out. Compassion is helping them adjust their frequencies. Oh, and the Void Painters want to decorate some of our buildings with murals that exist in 11 dimensions. Maybe start with something in 3 dimensions first, Emma suggested. The diplomatic shuttle finally touched down in the colony's main landing bay. Through the windows, Emma could see figures, in formal Earth government attire, disembarking alongside individuals in the distinctive robes of the Galactic Council's Psychic Studies Division. Time to meet the future, Captain Martinez said. The meeting took place in the colony's main conference hall, which had been enlarged and modified to accommodate both human and Vorthak participants. Ambassador Chen turned out to be a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes and an air of calm competence. She was accompanied by a diverse team that included not just humans but also representatives from several other species that had heard about the events on Kepler 442b. Ms. Vasquez, Ambassador Chen began, what you've accomplished here challenges every assumption we've made about psychic phenomena, interspecies relations, and conflict resolution. The Galactic Council is very interested in learning from your experiences. Emma glanced at Zephyrus, who nodded encouragingly. What do you want to know? Let's start with the basics. How did you develop the ability to resist and eventually communicate with hostile psychic entities? Emma thought about how to explain something she still didn't fully understand herself. I think it was because I never tried to fight them. When everyone else was building shields and barriers, I was trying to understand what they were feeling. Fear, loneliness, anger. Those are emotions I recognized even when they came from something alien. Dr. Voss, the head of the Psychic Studies Division, leaned forward intently. Are you suggesting that empathy is the key to psychic defense? Not defense, Emma corrected. Communication. Defense implies that you're trying to keep something out. But what if instead of keeping them out, you invite them in and show them something better? The delegation exchanged glances. This was clearly not what they had expected to hear. Ambassador Chen made a note on her tablet. The reports indicate that you've established some kind of permanent communication network with multiple cosmic entities. What are the implications for human expansion into space? Zephyrus spoke up, having returned to dragon form for the formal meeting. The entities that young Emma has befriended are ancient guardians of this region of space. They have knowledge of dangers that your species has not yet encountered. and they are willing to share that knowledge with trusted allies. Trusted allies, repeated Dr. Voss, and humanity has earned that trust? Some humans have, Emma said diplomatically. The ones who choose cooperation over conquest. The ones who see other species as potential friends instead of automatic threats. Ambassador Chen nodded thoughtfully. The Council is prepared to offer you a formal position as humanity's first psychic ambassador. The role would involve traveling to potential contact situations and serving as a mediator between human interests and psychic entities. Emma considered the offer carefully. It was an honor, certainly, and it would give her the chance to help prevent conflicts like the one that had nearly destroyed the colony. But it would also mean leaving behind the home she had found here. What about the people who've already learned to work with psychic entities? She asked. The other humans who've developed abilities, the Vorthak who've chosen to stay here, Compassion and its new friends. The colony would become humanity's first psychic studies center, Ambassador Chen explained. A place where humans and aliens can learn to work together, where we can develop new approaches to interspecies relations. Emma looked around the room at the faces of the people who had become her chosen family. Captain Martinez, who had trusted her judgment even when it seemed impossible. Dr. Yates, who had helped her understand her abilities. The Vorthak warriors who had initially been enemies but had become protectors. And Zephyrus, whose ancient wisdom and patient friendship had made everything possible. I'll take the position, Emma decided, but only if the team I work with includes both humans and Vorthak. And only if Compassion and the other entities have a voice in any decisions that affect them. Ambassador Chen smiled. I think that can be arranged. After all, you've proven that cooperation works better than conquest. As the formal meeting concluded, and the various officials began discussing the practical details of establishing the new center, Emma slipped away to the communication crystal in the corner of the room. Compassion, are you there? Always, young friend. How did your meeting with the important humans go? They want to make this place a center for learning about psychic relations. They want to teach other humans to do what we did here. And how do you feel about this? Emma thought about it for a moment. Hopeful, scared, excited all at the same time.